Excuse me, Satan. I think you're in my seat. I'm going to start this story off by saying that this is absolutely not one of my most shining moral moments and that I'm well aware that I was a straight-up asshole for doing what I did. My only real defense is that I was in a super bad place mentally and needed a mountain's worth of therapy. If you're curious about the circumstances around her, check my profile. Bitch was evil in human form. Now, on with the revenge. I was a weird kid growing up, really weird. It was mostly because I was being abused at home and forcibly isolated. My social skills were so underdeveloped that I had difficulty reading human faces aside from my grandmother, grandfather, and father. Being the weird kid meant I was a juicy target for bullies. It never stopped, but there was one bully that I hated more than any of the others. We'll call her Holly. This girl never passed up an opportunity to make my life hell, and since she lived across the street from me there was nowhere I could avoid her. Holly treated me like garbage. Here are a few examples. She put dog crap in our mailbox on a regular basis. She let my dog out of my yard and I was never able to get her back. She would also sit on her porch with her friends and roast the hell out of me to entertain them if I so much as put a toe outside of my front door. It went on for years. I hated her with the fiery passion of 1,000 suns, but while my grandmother was still alive there was nothing I could do about Holly. If I did anything to her or fought back in any way my grandmother would punish me for it and I was more afraid of her than I was Holly, for a very good reason. So I made a plan. I suffered through all the abuse and promised myself that when I was older I would make Holly pay for what she did to me. Thinking of what I was going to do to her when the time was right was sometimes the only thing that kept me going. Over time, Holly grew up, and eventually she left me alone and stopped being an asshole. Unfortunately for her by then it was too late. I didn't give a shit about her new moral epiphany. I had been nursing my grudge for 2 decades and it was time for a reckoning. I was going to destroy that bitch. When my grandmother finally died, it was go time. And I'd had 20 years to plan. I wasn't idle while I waited. I'd made it my mission in life to learn as much about Holly as possible, and to do it I became friends with a few people on the periphery of her social circle. Eventually, I knew more about her and her life than her own mother did. The first step I took in my plan was getting her fired from her job. It took longer than I would have liked, but eventually I managed it. Holly worked at a doctor's office, and I knew that the doctor she worked for was super Christian. Very straight edge, upstanding type of guy. He also had a huge influence on the local community. I decided to become a patient at his office, scheduling my visits to be on the days Holly was off work. After a couple of visits I just happened to notice Holly in the staff photo on the waiting room wall. I made a show of looking surprised and then concerned. I got to the exam room, and the doctor came in shortly after. The expression on my face got his attention, and he asked me what was wrong. I told him that even though I didn't want to, as a Christian I couldn't keep my knowledge a secret and still sleep at night because I just couldn't let him endanger his soul and reputation by doing nothing. I had his full attention, then, and I asked him as one fellow Christian to another not to tell anyone where he got the information I was about to give him. After he promised he would, I told him that I knew that Holly was using illegal drugs. He was absolutely floored and at first he didn't believe me. I told him that I understood his skepticism entirely, but it was easy enough to prove or disprove my information with a drug test. If I was wrong, he lost nothing. If I was right he was saving himself from trouble down the road. He finally agreed to test her, and he tested everyone else too so that it didn't look like Holly was the only target. See, I wasn't actually lying. Holly smoked a shitload of weed, and I knew that because it was my dad she used to get it from. He'd been her weed dude since she was like 15. Her test came back positive for marijuana and much to my surprise, Xanax. Oopsie. The doctor fired Holly on the spot when the results of the urinalysis came back and then he called me to thank me for telling him what was going on, and before he hung up he told me that I'd truly walked with the Lord. Y'all will never know how hard I had to fight not to laugh at the depths of his wrongness. I thought I was going to pop a blood vessel. Phase 1 complete. I know what you're thinking, it's just a job and it's not like she can't go get another one, right? Losing a job isn't the end of the world. You'd be wrong. Remember how I said that her boss had a very high reputation in our area? That man called every single hospital and doctor's office in the state personally to make sure that none of them would hire Holly and risk liability and loss of community trust for associating with her. Holly's field of study was all pertaining to the medical profession, so her education was rendered worthless because nobody would hire her. I wasn't done yet. Nope, not even close. She lost her job, and because she had no income her car got repossessed. She still had her family though, 2 kids and a fiancé. Who needs families? A Mirai? With the help of a good friend of mine, we catfished the duck out of her fiancé. My friend is hot AF, and she let me use pictures of her to prove that she was really real. She even got on Skype with him once. When he finally made the arrangements for a face-to-face encounter and booked a hotel room, I texted the screenshots of everything to Holly from a burner number. To say the excrement impacted the oscillating unit would be a vast understatement. They broke up, the whole thing was an ordeal, and Holly was devastated. She had 2 kids, no job, and now no fiancé who could help her keep the family afloat. A normal person would have stopped then. Unfortunately, I am not normal, and I was going full scorched earth. I seethed for 20 years, no way in hell was I going easy on her. Phase 3. With her fiancé gone and no job, Holly was struggling badly. She needed money, and she needed it quickly before she and the kids got evicted. Meth is a giant problem in my area. It's high risk, but it's also fast money, and so I started subtly mentioning Holly's situation among my more legally questionable family. Eventually, one of my family's friends who happened to be a meth cook got in contact with Holly and offered her a shitload of cash to let him cook dope at her house. It was supposed to be a one-time thing. 2 days and then done forever. Holly was desperate, so she said yes. Everything went smoothly at first, but dead in the middle of the cook, someone called an anonymous tip about an active cook in progress to the local narcotics unit. They rolled up on Holly's house at about 3 a.m. and caught everybody inside, including Holly red-handed making meth. Watching her cry when they handcuffed her and put her in that police cruiser was one of the most gloriously satisfying moments of my life. She was in deep legal doo-doo, and to make a bad situation even worse, most houses where labs are discovered aren't deemed habitable afterwards because the toxic fumes from the chemicals used to make the drug get everywhere, and it's super hard and time-consuming to clean. It's up to the property owner to either hire a hazmat team to clean it, or condemn it and tear it down. A lab cleanup costs thousands of dollars. It would have cost more money to clean it than the entire property was worth. So it got torn down, with everything Holly owned still inside. See, you can't take things out of a meth lab because they're going to be covered in toxic residue. It can make you very sick, especially young children. Everything in the residence is usually counted as a loss. Now, some people sneak in and grab stuff anyway, but whatever, it's their funeral. But since Holly was still sitting in jail, there was no way for her to get anything, and none of her close family were interested in risking getting caught sneaking into the house and being accused of stealing or tampering with a crime scene. Holly ended up in jail for a while, and while she was gone, the court gave their father, ex-fiancé, sole custody of their children, and Holly was only given supervised visitation. 2 hours every Saturday if I recall correctly. Revenge is a dish best served cold, and mine was freezing. I was behind every single bad thing that happened in Holly's life, in one way or another, for an entire 5-year period. She decided she liked bullying me and making my life hell, and she figures there would never be any consequences. Instead, I took her reputation, her job, her fiancé, got her arrested and convicted of a felony, and her children taken from her, and the best part is that she has no clue I did it to this very day. She'd forgotten about me. What she did to me impacted my life forever, but to her it wasn't even important enough to her to bother remembering. I was nothing to her, so she never connected me to her problems. Last I heard, she was in rehab for alcoholism and had her parental rights terminated permanently. After she lost her kids, she just sort of gave up and crawled into a bottle and never came out again. I was tempted to tell her, but I decided that the helplessness and confusion about why everything suddenly went to hell in a handbasket was the better plan, because that means that every now and again I can contact her and pretend to give a shit about her troubles to get a fresh revenge boner about her newest tale of woe. She thinks I'm the nicest person she's ever met. Smiley face, smiley face, smiley face, is posted from our pro revenge. Someone said this post would fit in here. Added, a lot of people are under the impression that the things Holly did to me were minor and didn't merit my reaction because the ones I spoke about were small. I guess I was trying to make myself a little less pathetic in front of people. She did way more to me than the specifics I mentioned. It's just embarrassing to admit to being weak enough that she could do it to me at all. She beat my back more than a few times. Once she and her friends force-fed me shit. Actual shit. No, I don't know what kind. She shoved me down an embankment and I chipped my front tooth on a cinder block. The list goes on, and I don't really feel like going into it, but suffice to say it wasn't just teasing. It doesn't make what I did much better, but I didn't do it over something minor. I am also female. Also, we lived in a trailer park, which was why they tore the house down rather than clean it. Her house wasn't worth more than $3,000 on its best day. Those are all the details I intend to add here, as any others would make things too specific. This is some nuclear revenge, but shit man, I know your reasoning, but I still gotta say this is ducked up.